Okay, so, when last we left off, I was reading Director's Cut Part 4, and I realized that it was really fucking long, and it was gonna be like a 50 to an hour long video. 50 minute to an hour long. So I cut it. And now I'm gonna read the rest of Director's Cut Part 4, which I think will be the end of the tale of Old Man Henderson. Switching away from the antics of Henderson for a while, we take the action to London. Most spies who try James Bond-level bullshit get killed. They get lost or abandoned by their own country. Most spies are not Simon Breckenridge. Due to careful manipulation of events behind the scenes, he managed to close multiple gaps in security, sleep with most of the attractive ladies in town, and pass all the blame to other people. He had a distinguished career behind him, and retired at age 45 with enough embezzled government funds to have him tried for treason. Less than a week later, without his spy network in place, his country house is destroyed and he goes back to work trying to figure out who killed his wife. His one lead skips town on a boat, so he goes to America with only one goal in mind: revenge. He knows that he'll have to use local conditions to his advantage, since he is going in blind and without a penny to his name. After all, the Crown could hardly be caught funding a covert operation stateside. I track the yacht and find out where it intends to make landfall. I send a wire back home and discover that it's an influential member of a group known as the Disciples of the Yellow King. Looking around, it's not exactly hard to figure out why he might be interested in this town. Someone apparently declared war on his fucking religion. I decide that finding the group responsible for this would be a wise move, since the enemy of my enemy would make an excellent disposable asset for the given value of friend. Deciding to get up bright and early the next day to search it out, I retire to a pub near my quaint hotel room, intending to sample the local fare. As I walk into Harry's pub, I'm greeted by a pair of people in the midst of a heated argument. "I'm telling you, Will, this sort of degenerate activity is what's wrong with this country today." "You're fucking crazy, Henderson. Each generation has its thing. You guys had Woodstock, this is just the new thing." "Come on, we all know those punks on TV are talentless hacks. The real masters of the craft are dead and gone." "I guess that's true enough, assuming you give proper credit to the proper men." "Will, there's no fucking way in any universe that Tupac was better than Biggie." "Let's get a second opinion," Will responds, before pointing at Simon. "You there, new guy." "Yes." "Tupac or Biggie?" "For what, President? I'd rather vote someone with a sense of pizzazz. What's Liberace doing these days?" Henderson smiles. "I like this guy. Sup, Limey? What brings you across the pond?" "I'm a secret agent for the Crown. I came here to reenact a James Bond movie and get thrown out under an assumed name. Given your hilariously liberal gun laws, that should take most of my holiday." "Which Bond?" "Connery. The only proper one." Simon notes, a hint of distaste in his voice. "Nice." Henderson looks at the TV. "Hey, they're talking about us again." "Your church?" Simon asks, taking mental notes. "Victims of..." Oh, that's not Henderson. "Victims of jihad," Will responds, taking a sip of beer. "Demon-summoning cultist bastards." "Stole my gnomes, too!" "Why do you reckon they did that, anyway?" Will asks, turning to his compatriot. "Nearest I can get some sort of ritual sacrifice," Henderson responds. "By the way, that taxidermist ever finished stuffing that poodle? I figure I can use him to keep away the kids on Halloween." Simon finishes his mental assessment. These morons will make for excellent cannon fodder. "Gentlemen, a proposition." He then explains the yacht situation to the two of them while Henderson takes a call from Jimmy. He then laughs. "Can you boys handle getting some parachutes and some speakers for a rock concert? I just had the best plan ever." "What sort of plan is this?" Will asks, watching Henderson intently. "The best one ever! Come on, when have I ever lied to you?" Refusing to explain further, he goes and leaves in his Buick to unknown destinations. Will lets out a sigh. "I know where we can grab some speakers. You think you can get some parachutes?" "I think I can manage. We meet back up here tomorrow?" So while we went off to do some very mundane things, Henderson went to the local Air Force base. He told the man at the gate that he was a veteran needing to see a doctor, and then drove off to where the vehicles are kept. Since the GM had no idea how base security was supposed to work, he pretty much just walked up to a cargo chopper going through pre-flight checks and punched out the pilot. After hooking up the Buick, he flew across town to an abandoned warehouse and parked the chopper before going home. There really isn't anything more to that story. Apparently these were the worst MPs in the history of our armed forces. We all come back to the bar, and Simon informs the group that the yacht will arrive in 2 days' time. Henderson and Jimmy rig up a thing that would let them control the various light charges and speakers from a cheap laptop, while Simon reacquainted himself with the controls of a helicopter. The theft and dropping of the yacht clearly happened at this point, so I'm not going to bother reposting that part of the tale here. My version wouldn't be nearly as funny as the way Mike wrote it anyway. Waffle House Millionaire, November 20th, 2012. I totally expected more resistance. I planned that shit out like a Shadowrun style attack, and then nothing happened. I just kind of walked in and jacked the chopper. Hilariously, I had no fly-a-chopper related skills, even in the backstory. GM just assumed it was there and I went. I fully expected to crash that thing in a field running from, like, the entire military. At this point in the game, having dropped the yacht, we are under no illusions as to what was going to happen next. The GM gave up the investigative undertones. We gave up on disguising our war. I don't know why, but the GM refused to give us a cop-out. He didn't want to just rage quit and go, "Rocks fall, everyone dies." The session ended with us dropping a yacht, and we all walked out of there fully expecting open warfare when we returned to the table. A week later, we met for the last time as a group after months of weekly games. It took Henderson about 3 weeks to completely destroy any semblance to a plot or long-term goal. All that mattered at this point was that our deaths were long, glorious, and brutal. Ironically, it was the first time we all arrived at the table with the same expectations and enthusiasm. Mike wanted to see Henderson die, and the GM wanted to kill him. I wanted Simon to draw it out as long as possible. John wanted to see Will continue to give 0 fucks. In a way, we all succeeded in our respective goals. The game picks up about 3 days after the dropping of the yacht. The remaining cultists begin to kill each other in open warfare, and the police and federal investigators are all flipping their shit over the blatant wizardry happening. In the midst of it all, we're hitting high-priority targets and wreaking as much havoc as possible. The Buick is sacrificed as a car bomb to wipe out a police station full of Shoggoths. We managed to briefly steal a tank from the National Guard and drive it right through a bunch of zombies in a shopping mall. Henderson updates his outfit, swapping the Hawaiian shirt for a leather jacket, the back of which is emblazoned with a gnome wearing aviators and throwing up the horns. He also dons a regular pair of gray cargo pants, since he would have more pockets then. Simon puts on a tuxedo and refused to take it off, while Will donned a Flogging Molly t-shirt and a Utilikilt. Jimmy and Carrie, sadly, couldn't update their costumes. Their players were pulled out of the game at this point by Jim's parents in the real world, since they insisted on dragging them to some movie. We decided that meant that Henderson made Jimmy get the hell out of Dodge, commanding him to continue the good fight if it came to that. We went back to the abandoned hockey stadium we were using as a base and loaded him up so he'd get out safe, and then dropped him near a military evac zone where he met his family. We raided an Applebee's to get some food supplies, and then hit up a hardware store along the way. On the way back, we found out the bad guys have realized we're the cause of all their problems, and were about to launch a coordinated strike against us. They breach the military line between us and them, and start to pour after us like a black sea of unthinkable horrors. Along the way, they started to reanimate the dead and dying of both sides to join their charge. We managed to stay half a step ahead all the way back home, occasionally taking a detour through a place like an abandoned shopping mall or the home and garden center at Lowe's. We get back and then Henderson lifts up a gnome from the back of the truck. He smiles and then sets it down before turning to us. "Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure." And with that, he made his way to the rink. We all knew then that it was a last stand scenario, and we started barricading the doors. We managed to get 3 of the 4 entrances almost unbeatable, but the 4th one was being broken open when Will and I got to it. Simon told him to go and make sure he took as many with him as he could before walking into the mass to rejoin his wife. Will stole a Zamboni out of storage and set a new high score while running over zombies and throwing ammo and such to Henderson. When he died, they were forced to go over the machine he left to get onto the ice, where Henderson was waiting for them. He managed to kill a shitload of them, but when he saw they managed to get rid of Will's impromptu barricade. As if on cue, all 3 of the still locked entrances explode open and a horde seemingly without number comes in. Henderson smiled and called Hastur forward into the world and set the timers. As Hastur stepped forward, he got a rather unusual greeting. "Oh, Canada, our home and native..." I can't sing. It's the Canadian theme song. I've just lost the key. I'm not Canadian. The king in yellow pauses, while Mike apparently hits the limit of the internal clock he's been ticking off in his head. "All right, we win." "What?" "The charges go off. I set them for 15 seconds. I needed to make sure he had enough time to arrive, but not enough time to actually arrive." "What?" He then broke it down and explained little pieces of information gleaned from investigative portions of the game. Meticulous notes from months prior. Together they painted a very obscure bit of information regarding the nature of the gods in this setting. "But that's... you bastard!" the GM accused dramatically, standing up and pointing. "You only just now noticed?" Mike returned, politely baffled. The GM then performed the first and only table flip I've ever seen in my years of gaming, before leaving in a huff. After a few moments of awkward silence, I realized that for all the bullshit, it wasn't really a satisfying ending. I'm not sure what drove me to do it, but I stood up. I picked up the table and I moved to the now vacant GM's seat. Henderson came to a few moments later, most of his body crushed in rubble. A few feet away, he notices another figure. "Sup?" he wheezes, while reaching into his coat with his one good arm, pulling out a joint he stashed away for future use. "I'm dying," the form replies, his voice weak. "I must commend you, human. I did not think you capable of such a task." "Yeah, you seemed the type to know a lot. Something I learned early in life is that no one expects a sucker punch from someone they underestimate." He then lights his slip with a smile. "True," the form responds. "You know, I've been following you. You know, I never took your gnomes." "Fuck, really? Well, now I feel like I might have overreacted a bit," he says with a cough. He then passes the blunt to Hastur, who, only after a moment's hesitation, accepts. "You apparently gave them up for a charity auction," he informs him. "You know, I've figured everything out but one little detail. Mind if I ask you a question?" "Shoot." "Is Henderson your first or last name?" "Man, I've got no fucking idea." Laughing, the man and the mad god died together moments later. Henderson's body was dragged from the rubble 2 days afterwards, and only Jimmy and Carrie and some old preacher man cared enough to attend his funeral. Waffle House Millionaire, November 20th, 2012. To clarify in further detail, Henderson asked for them not to waste money on a corpse. His exact words were to just toss me in an old sack or something and send me to the dump. Ain't nobody gonna mourn me or give two shits I even lived. Jimmy opted to get him a rather nice coffin and pay for a decent funeral, even if there was only the two of them there to mourn. It amounted to nothing, but I felt oddly touched that he felt obligated to make the gesture. Will was buried nearby, since they were apparently friends in life and he didn't have much left in the world after his bar burnt down. Simon was quietly retrieved by his son and put to rest near his wife's grave a week later. Jimmy and Carrie managed to get into a nice college together, since the insurance from Henderson's life and homeowners insurance policies, as well as the money coming in from liquidating Will's assets, gave them a nice head start on life. The story didn't quite end there, but I'll let that shit slide for now, since I know you guys only care about one epilogue. Henderson opened his eyes, fighting off a migraine God only knows how long later. He forces himself to his feet and squints around at the blank desert horizon. He looks at the mesas in the distance, the endless sands in every direction. Well, I'm either in hell or Utah. He lets out a deep sigh, realizing he's out of cigarettes. Utah, knowing my luck. He notices a town in the distance, and having no better idea on what to do next, he begins to wander in its direction. Man, that better not be a fucking mirage. A Self Called Nowhere, November 20th, 2012. Alright, that's it then. The official, final end of the Old Man Henderson story. This was the definitive version, since neither I nor Waffle House Millionaire have much more to expand on from there. There is more in store for our hero, but it's not really just his tale anymore. Sometime in the future, I'll tell the story of the game I will never top as a GM. It was a first in many ways for me. It was the first game system I designed, admittedly. It was mostly just Deadlands modded to hell. It was the first full game I ran. It was the first campaign I named going into it. It was a game so successful and loved by my players that every one of the main characters ended up getting their own spin-off campaign. So, that's it for Henderson. But keep your eyes peeled for when I lay out the Kings of Nowhere. I'm not going to half-ass it like I did this one, since it's the campaign that I feel I need to do justice. A short little epilogue, because I feel like I need to read the whole thing. Eli Burning. Waffle House Millionaire, March 6th, 2012. Right, so the tale of Old Man Henderson ended when he died. Or so I thought. A friend of mine gave me a call and asked if I wanted to play in a game he was going to run. The premise was this. There were various people who were simply amazing during life. Like how there's a normal engineer and then there's Tony Stark. There's a normal driver and then there's the Stig. There's a normal detective and then there's Sherlock Holmes. These people were basically heroes, like the ones of old, expressed in a new way. And when these legends die, they don't completely fade away. Sometimes when one dies with a job unfinished, they end up haunting a place. Some, when they die, they become martyrs for the cause, never fully removed from memory. And then there's the oddest cases. When two heroes clash and destroy each other, their duel continues in another place. A place somewhere between life and death, heaven and hell. Here, their quarrel is settled properly, and the winner gets a second shot at life. I'm not going to tell the full campaign story here, since this isn't the time or place, nor have I had the chance to type it up properly. In the end, Henderson beat a vastly weakened Hastur and won his resurrection. Then he found out what happens to a god when it dies. It doesn't get an afterlife, it just stops existing and a new one takes its old place in the cosmos. So he did something that threw everyone for a loop. Hijacked Hastur's essence to contact another god. Nyarlathotep answered the call since he just loves fucking with the established order of things. He cut a deal with Henderson. He'd bring them both back to life as normal humans, but he got to keep Hastur's power unless Hastur decided to claim it back. Henderson was then reborn into the mortal world. In his new life, he came across some knowledge that his childhood friend Heather was Hastur reborn while simultaneously regaining all the memories of his past life. He then got Heather drunk, got her to reclaim her power, and sealed it in an amulet. Nyarlathotep does not appreciate the irony and sends cultists to kill him, which is kind of like trying to put out a wildfire by dumping oil on it. Henderson was last seen at around age 17, grabbing Heather and using some weird ritual to throw them into a parallel universe that Nyarlathotep couldn't touch. You could also call young Old Man Henderson Eli Burning, since that's technically his name now that he's been reborn. And that is the full and complete story of Old Man Henderson. And there's fan art of it, which I highly recommend you look up. People have made some fantastic fan art of this crazy motherfucker. For tabletop gamers, let this be an inspiration to you. There are many better things you can do than walk out of a game you don't like. You can fix it and make it incredible. And for GMs or DMs, let this be a lesson to you not to be a bastard. Because every once in a while you will have a player, like this motherfucker, who will just completely wreck your shit. And you don't want that. I mean, maybe you do, but in the end, it's Old Man Henderson's story, not the GM's. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed reading it. Again, I do apologize for the slurs in here. I apologize for the offense they may have caused. I know I didn't put a warning at the beginning of each video, and I know if I had taken the time to do some good editing, I could have bleeped them out. I don't know how to do that at the moment, but that isn't an excuse. and really, I don't go to sleep. I realized that even though that's how the story was written, that's not necessarily how I had to read it. So I am sorry for any offense caused. And who knows? Maybe now that I've said this, I'll go back and figure out how to bleep out words. I'll see what I can do. If I don't manage to get it done, I'm sorry. Just know that that doesn't reflect my own personal taste in using words. Yeah. So I am sorry for the use of those slurs. But that aside, I will see all you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed this regardless. I certainly enjoyed reading it. So yeah, I guess I will see you guys next time. So, bye!